The shocking truth about Dominic Toretto's family. The legendary Fast and Furious didn't just hit a wall, it smashed against a cynical, impenetrable barrier of 50 million directed by its own studio. The greatest racing action franchise of all time is currently balancing on the brink of a disgraceful cancellation, and you won't believe the humiliating sacrifices Vin Diesel has already been forced to make to save a finale that risks becoming the most pathetic in Hollywood history. Get ready to find out which stars have already been cut from the script and why the final minutes of the saga might be shot on an old mobile phone camera. The engine that not only ran for 2 decades but literally tore up screens and box office records worldwide has suddenly stalled. The legendary Fast and Furious franchise, built on speed, testosterone, and the eternal pathos of family, finds itself in a bind more dangerous than any shootout or helicopter chase. It's not Dominic Toretto, but his financial minders who have hit a real wailing wall constructed of cold, soulless dollars. And this wall, it turns out, is far stronger than any concrete barrier that the family has ever smashed through in their tuned-up monsters. Universal Pictures, the very studio that for years tallied billions in profits and allowed Vin Diesel and his team to create the absolutely unthinkable on screen, has issued an ultimatum that has shaken Hollywood. An ultimatum so cruel and cynical that it calls into question not just the release of the 11th final Fast and Furious film, but Diesel's very status as Hollywood's main macho producer. The essence of it is simple and humiliating. Either the budget for the final race is slashed so severely that only miserable scraps remain, or the final race won't happen at all. Can you imagine? An era that gave us tanks on the highway, submarines, and cars jumping between skyscrapers risks ending not with a triumphant roar of engines, but with a quiet, shameful whimper in the accounting department, strangled, like the last street racer caught by the police, but with the financial news. These are not just production problems, it's a slap in the face to modern Hollywood. We are watching as the machine created to milk successful franchises to the last drop is now devouring its own offspring, leaving behind only bloody scraps. This is the end of the golden age of blockbusters as we knew it. Why such panic? How did a multi-billion-dollar saga that grossed over 7 billion at the box office, yes, you heard that right, 7 billion, suddenly find itself on the brink of destitution? The reason, my friends, is simple and ridiculously humiliating. Fast X 2023 turned out to be a colossal figure, not with clay, but with golden legs that couldn't support its sky-high body. The budget for this film, according to various sources, was an astronomical $340, 380 million. To put that in perspective, that's twice what is needed to create several Oscar-winning dramas. And what was the result? The box office, although impressive, 714 million, brought the studio only a tiny, almost negligible profit. Compared to previous installments, this is the franchise's weakest result in the last decade. Universal heard the alarm bell, and it sounded like an old, rusted horn. The Hollywood rule states that to be considered successful, a film must gross approximately 3 times its budget at the box office, and to break even, at least 2.5 times. The 10th installment failed. It couldn't even break even in the traditional sense after accounting for marketing and cinema cuts. And now, the finale is being forced to pay for this financial failure. According to the Wall Street Journal, and this is not gossip from the back alleys of a movie set, but serious insider information, Universal Studio bosses have set a strict condition: the new film will only be greenlit if its budget does not exceed 200 million. And what about Diesel's team? The script currently on the table requires a minimum of 250 million. This means that 50 million is the price tag. $50 million that has become the stumbling block, risking burying an entire cinematic era. Think about it. 50 million that separates a legendary finale from inglorious oblivion. In a world where Diesel flies cars into space, this amount looks like mere change, but for Universal, it has become a symbol of financial discipline and the end of mindless budget inflation. The situation is exacerbated by more than just money. The film film currently has no approved budget, no final script, and most scandalously, most of the cast still do not have contracts. This is no longer just creative differences. This is a full-blown existential crisis for the family. While Vin Diesel, the eternal optimist and undisputed leader of the saga, tries to save face and posts bombastic messages on social media about unity and the return of old heroes, hinting at a possible reunion of Dom with Brian and Connor, even through flashbacks or digital tricks, Universal is preparing a plan of total savings behind his back, bordering on sabotage. To fit into this humiliatingly slashed 200 million, the creators will have to make sacrifices that fans are terrified to even think about. Reduction of exotic locations, goodbye world, hello, cheap green screens, and the back streets of Los Angeles. The series' signature, dizzying races through Rome, Tokyo, or Rio, will be replaced by a chase around the same block, filmed from 3 different angles, cutting actors' roles or completely dropping their participation. This is where the most tabloid part of the drama begins. Which secondary but audience favorite characters will be sidelined? Which member of the family will be told, sorry buddy, your role in the finale is one short appearance in the garage and we can shoot it in an hour? Persistent rumors suggest that the most expensive guest stars from the last few installments, whose fees exceed the entire special effects budget, might face the axe. On whom will the choice fall? Which member of the family will the accountants point their fingers at? Decrease in costly action. The scariest thing, a Fast and Furious finale without spectacle, without dizzying stunts that defy all laws of physics. That's like trying to win a Grand Prix on a scooter. The bosses demand fewer explosions, less destruction, less computer graphics. They want drama, not a blockbuster. But who, for God's sake, watches Fast and Furious for drama? This threatens to turn the iconic franchise into a pathetic parody of itself. The finale, which should have been the apotheosis of action, risks becoming the most modest, most chamber style, and possibly the dullest film in the series. But Universal, like a true predator, is already preparing its fallback, and it does not involve saving the family's honor. It involves dismembering the franchise into cheaper, more manageable parts. Rumor has it that the following less expensive projects are actively being discussed. Spin-offs about secondary characters, cheap, narrowly focused films centered on 1 or 2 actors like Hobbs or Shaw. They are many times cheaper, easier to shoot, and don't require the involvement of the entire expensive family cast. The problem is that the audience is expecting an epic finale, not another half measure, a television series. This is where the main horror lies. The franchise will not be closed. It will simply be put on an assembly line in the format of a weekly, low-budget series, dismantled for spare parts. Imagine a weekly Fast and Furious shot with the quality of a third-rate 90s action film. This would look like a desecration of everything the series once stood for. This is the main tragedy and hypocrisy of Hollywood. The studio that should have allowed the story to retire at its peak, beautifully and with dignity, is now wringing the life out of a dying franchise until only a shadow of its former greatness remains. They became so absorbed in creating endless sequels, so blinded by billions in revenue, that they forgot the main thing, the spark, the soul that once ignited the love of millions of fans. This entire situation is not just a crisis for Fast and Furious, it's Vin Diesel's personal drama. He, who was always more than just an actor, who is the producer, the mastermind, and essentially the patriarch of this fictional family, is now forced to haggle with accountants for the right to complete his main brainchild. Rumors suggest that relations between Diesel and Universal management are strained to the limit. Studio bosses, according to insider information, blame him for inflated budgets and a lack of financial discipline, hinting that his fees and uncontrollable demands for special effects were one of the main reasons why Fast X failed to deliver expected profits. Diesel, in turn, is trying to maneuver, promising the most emotional and touching finale, attempting to appeal to the fans' sense of nostalgia and the studio's corporate loyalty. But money speaks louder than any family oath. He is forced to fight not with bandits and terrorists, but with corporate greed and cold calculation. And this battle, it seems, will be the most difficult and possibly the losing one of his career. He risks going down in history not as the hero who saved the world, but as the producer who couldn't stick to the budget. What a humiliation, but why such an abrupt change of course? Why is Universal, which only yesterday they greenlit every crazy project of Diesel's, now behaving like a scrupulous banker. The fact is that Hollywood is experiencing a new economic reality. The gold rush of blockbusters and superhero franchises is coming to an end. Audience fatigue. Fans are tired of endless cookie-cutter sequels and reboots that bring nothing new but more expensive CGI. Giant failures. In recent years, we have seen the spectacular failures of other high-budget films. Studios have become afraid to risk their hundreds of millions. One failure can crash a company's stock. Streaming. The rise of streaming platforms has also changed the rules of the game, forcing studios to look for cheaper but stable sources of content, like those spin-off series. Now every dollar counts, and even a giant like Fast and Furious is on the brink of survival because it is simply no longer trusted to recoup its insane expenses. The apotheosis of cynicism. The studio is ready to sacrifice the quality and scope of the finale just to avoid losing an extra 50 million. This shows the true price of art in modern Hollywood, where art has ended and only business has begun. The future of the saga is uncertain. There are 3 possible scenarios, and none of them look optimistic for fans. The Diesel miracle, unlikely. Vin Diesel and his team achieve the impossible. They rewrite the script, persuade the actors to lower their fees, find cheap but brilliant ways to shoot the action and fit within the 200 million budget, all while creating a worthy finale. This would require such a level of compromise that the film might become unrecognizable. The shameful compromise, most likely. The film is released, but it looks poorer than the previous installments. Special effects are lacking, beloved actors only appear for a second, and the plot seems rushed and convoluted. Fans are disappointed, and the legend leaves the screen with a sense of shame. The cancellation, most scandalous. The parties cannot agree. Universal refuses to allocate funds. The project is frozen indefinitely and then quietly closed. The final installment of the saga forever remains Fast X, which was only half the story. Can you imagine the headlines? Fast and Furious ends mid-sentence. The main question now is not even whether Fast and Furious 11 will be released. The question is whether it will be the triumphant song we were promised or a death rattle drowned out by the harsh, ruthless reality of Hollywood accountants. We are losing more than just a film. We are losing a symbol of an era when blockbusters could be carefree, irrational, and simply fun. We are losing faith that even such a seemingly unbreakable family can withstand corporate greed. If Fast and Furious cannot conclude its story with dignity, it will be a lesson for all of Hollywood. If you milk your franchises to the last drop, they will die in your arms, bleeding out before the eyes of millions of fans. The fate of the family hangs by a thread, and it's not a thread from a cable that can be snapped by a supercar. It's the thinnest strand of a financial statement that can be cut with a single stroke of a pen. We are following the news and preparing for the worst. Perhaps we will have to say goodbye to Dominic Toretto in a way we never imagined.